Okay, so we're starting with chapter 15. Now, you may recall in chapter 14, we talked about several entities to set up for the operation of a business. The obvious omission from that chapter is the corporation. Now, you might ask why the corporation deserves its own chapter. And the answer to that question is that if you drive down any urban street and look to your left and to your right, the majority of businesses that you'll see are in fact operating as corporations. All right. So the corporate form of ownership are the largest and perhaps most influential economically and politically in our society. So the largest entities are the corporations. All right. And from a historical perspective, if you buy into the analogy that any point in time, the tallest buildings in society represent the most important organizations in a society. And if we were to go back in time, say, um, 100 years or so, the tallest buildings are going to be the churches. All right. And that, I think, is a statement to the importance, the leading, the most influential businesses and the most influential people were the pastors and the preachers and the clergymen. And they had a lot of influence when it came to making laws and electing politicians, and so on and so forth. All right. Now, if we fast forward 20 to 30 years or so, we've seen a shift, and the tallest buildings in the community are in fact the governmental offices and City Hall and the courthouse and all of the other governmental buildings. All right. Which represents a shift away from the churches and religious leaders being the most influential persons in the society, and we've shifted focus to government and the legislature and the manager and governor and president as the most influential people in society. All right. And if we fast forward to present day, if you look at the skyline of downtown Cincinnati, you can pick out certain buildings, right? There's the Great American Insurance Building, right? There's Macy's, and there's Kroger, and then there's a law firm, and then there's several businesses, and those are clear in a way the only businesses that you can recognize in the skyline from a distance. Now, every single one of those is a corporation, all right? And so we've shifted to corporations being the largest and most influential entities that exist in society today. All right. In addition, I want you to think about all business revenue as a pie representing 100% of revenue. All right. And then you think of all the entities that we talked about in chapter 14. All right. So sole proprietorships, LLCs, partnerships, limited liability partnerships. And those businesses collectively representing less than 5% of total revenues of all businesses, which means that the corporate form of entity is responsible for about 95% of all business revenues. Right. So to put that another way, if businesses make $1, all right, if all businesses collectively make $1, 95 cents of that was made by corporations. All right, and I say that just to kind of give you a feel for the magnitude of the corporate form of ownership. All right. Now, there's a lot that we'll cover. I'm going to go a bit off the the chapter, because I want to lay out some terms that make it easier to start off the chapter. So I've just picked out some terms. Some of these we'll come back to later in chapter 15, but I want to start here. So we've got the corporation itself, all right? An entity created for business, charitable, or governmental purposes, all right? And business corporations are the most recognizable. I think we're the most aware of them, but they can also be created for charitable or governmental purposes, and we'll get through that in this chapter. All right. The corporation does have the rights of a person, which means they can sue and be sued. They can own property, sell property. All right. So they have the rights of a legal person. All right. Publicly traded. All right. And you'll hear me say this a lot. These are companies who offer fractional shares of ownership, i.e. stock, for purchase on stock exchanges. And the big two in the United States are the New York Stock Exchange, or NYSE, or NASDAQ. All right. Stockholders, obviously, are the owners of stock, and this is anyone with money to spend on stock. So this could be me or you, anybody that holds a 401k or a mutual fund that invests in stock is also a stockholder. But it could be anyone with a brokerage account that just says, hey, I'm going to buy some shares in stock. I think the stock will make money or increase in value, and I'm going to purchase the stock so I can be a part of that. All right. The last term before we talk about structure is the board of directors. All right, and this will make a bit more sense when we get to the next slide. But the board of directors is a group of people, usually with an odd number, so think 5, 7, or 9, with 9 probably being the most common. And what the board does is essentially meet periodically, monthly, quarterly, whatever it takes, to discuss the long-range planning of the corporation. All right. Okay. So let's talk about corporate structure. And usually I would scribble this out on a notepad, but due to our circumstance, I've dropped it into a PowerPoint slide. So let's get going. All right. Stockholders. All right. We defined stockholders a moment ago. They're at the top of the corporate structure. All right. Now, stockholders' main job is the let's see. So the stockholders' main job is they own the corporation collectively. Now, oftentimes it's fractional ownership, but their main job is the election of the board of directors. All right. So if I own stock, periodically, maybe annually or every 3 years, I'm going to get the opportunity to vote and to elect members of the board of directors. All right. And you may recall the board of directors is that body responsible for long-range planning of the company. All right. The boards make decisions like, should the company enter into a new market? Should they expand internationally? Should they diversify their product offerings? All right, so that's the type of stuff that the board of directors decides. Now, generally, the board of directors is not involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. All right, so we're talking about individuals who are very knowledgeable of the industry, but they don't necessarily have a job where they show up every day in the company. All right. There is one exception, for most companies. That exception is the Chief Executive Officer, or CEO. I'm sure you've heard this term. The CEO often does sit on the board of directors, and in fact serves as a connection from day-to-day operations to the board, because most of the board doesn't serve the corporation as an employee, right? They serve in an advisory role. They show up quarterly, let's say, and vote on important choices, so that the CEO provides the connection to day-to-day operations. All right. Now, the CEO in any company is the highest ranking employee. All right. And often the face of the company. All right. Now, the board's main duty besides long-range planning is the hiring, compensation, and evaluation of the chief executive officer. All right. So if you've ever wondered, who's the boss of the highest boss in a company, who tells the CEO if they're doing a good job, bad job, who reviews them and determines when they need raises, it's the board of directors, all right, in a company. All right. In many entities, there are, in virtually any company of any substantial size, there's also going to be a chief financial officer and oftentimes a chief operational officer. And depending upon the company, there may be other, or there will be other chief blank officer, be it chief technology officer or chief officer for international expansion, or whatever, right? Any high-ranking manager who has chief in their title. So the title chief blank officer really is indicative of the highest person in that particular responsibility segment. All right. So chief financial officer. Well, that's the highest ranking accountant in the company. All right. Chief operational officer is the highest ranking person responsible for operations, supply chain management, and that type of stuff. All right. So in many corporations, it's the CEO who is responsible for hiring and evaluation of other chief officers. All right. Some companies actually do the hiring, firing, evaluation, and raises of all chief blank officers at the board level. All right, so that varies a bit from company to company, but this is your typical corporate structure. And of course, it would go on from here. Below here, you'd have mid-level management, and lower, you'd have line-level employees and staff. All right, but that's your typical corporate structure. All right, so this will serve as our introduction to Chapter 15. The only other thing I'll have you guys do at this point is I've linked a video. It's actually called The Corporation, that I'd like for you to spend. Well, it's a long documentary, so you can break it up if you need to. It's about 2 hours. Watch that, and then we'll circle back with our next lecture and get into the nuts and bolts of Chapter 15. And also, I'll offer a discussion, my thoughts on the documentary. All right, so I will check back with you guys soon.